Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which is most important. It's a book dealing with terrorism. It's been written by Nicholas Ryder and it's from Routledge, who are an informer business, part of the Taylor and Francis group. The full title of the book is The Financial War on Terrorism, a review of counter-terrorist financing strategies since 2001. And it's part of the Law of Financial Crime series from Routledge. Now, my wife and I have discussed this book and had a good look at it. We've written reviews which are in the journals and on the web, and we've given it a title, A Refreshing Assessment of Subject Matter we had all hoped we would never have to read about again. Now, the reason I'm recording this is it's just the roundabout the anniversary of 9/11, and this book really comes from those appalling events. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's look at the book first of all. There's the front cover, you can see there, and then there's a spine and then there's the back. There's not a lot. It's a hardback, which you can see, and it's listed as Law and Security Studies for the library. Now the index is page number indexing. They've got it there. Then there's a very substantial bibliography, a lot of important information contained in the bibliography. And you can see it starts there. Then you get into the text of the book. The book actually only runs to just over 200 pages, 205 or 6 pages, something like that. You do have paragraph numbering, which is quite helpful on the sides to find things quickly. There is quite a lot of footnoting as well, which links into the bibliographies at the back. And at the front we have a basic statement, which I will be referring to about what the contents of the book have. There is the front cover, and that's the actual series, Law on Financial Crime series. So there's a number coming, about to be published and already published. The book is available also as an e-book. There are 7 chapters in total, including conclusions and recommendations at the end. It's a monograph, which is set out there, and then we start right away with the introduction, the preface rather, which explains where Mr. Ryder is coming from with what he has produced. And then we start off with 9/11. I found this a very interesting book, and the reason I mention that is because I have a personal connection with 9/11, because my brother had office and staff in the World Trade Center at the time of the attack. Fortunately, he wasn't killed, but other members were. So I'm well aware of what happened and the aftermath. So this is what we say when we're writing this review, as I say, at the time of the anniversary of 9/11. It's 14 years on now, and what have we learned? Frankly, very little since that terrible day. However, this counter-terrorist assessment, I think, is to be welcomed. It's a constructive start for what will be a very long duration of homicidal hostilities by these mass-murdering butchers. Except for one thing, we're now beginning to have quite a lot of books on terrorism and how it may be contained, for that is possibly all that the Free West can possibly do until the next outrage occurs. Unfortunately, it's a little bit like gun control in the United States of America. You have a lot of talk and emotion when there's an outrage, and nothing much then happens until the next outrage occurs. Or does it? Well, this is where I think the book has tremendous value, because it's worth reading to see whether we have any feasible way of dealing with potential 9/11 outrages in the future, when these insane humans kill for the sake of it. So this new work by Nicholas Ryder has left people saying we would like, possibly, could be, let's put it that way, could be having some people saying we'd like our money back, please, because nothing really has changed and the killing goes on. However, Ryder addresses that issue. The subtitle of the work is a review of counter-terrorist financing strategies since 2001, and this is a start at least. And of course it has to be recognised that you're not going to get full information, because that would be giving all the information out to the other side, but at least we know that it is being seriously pursued as a subject. We remember that on 9/11 19 insane terrorists committed the largest and deadliest terrorist attack in the United States of America that we witnessed. The response from the international community, and in particular America, was swift. Bush declared what is described now as either the war on terror or the global war on terror, and he instigated basically this work, Financial War on Terrorism. The book thus defines and identifies what is called the so-called financial war on terrorism, and it gives a critical review of the impact of counter-terrorist financing strategies in detail, with quite a lot of referencing to assist anyone who would want to argue about it. It actually deals with what has been enacted by both individual jurisdictions and international organisations to deal with what is a global menace. A comparative approach then is used, and that's right. Ryder highlights the levels of compliance in each selected jurisdiction and organisation with requirements of what he's actually got in the book. And he also analyses measures introduced by the UN, including UN sanctions against terrorists and the operation of its anti-terrorist sanctions committees and the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force. I'm not going to say any more about sanctions. You either think that they work or not. They are basically a bit of a curate's egg in many ways, because the final solution, I hate to use that word, but the final way of dealing with it is military action, and that is the only way at the end. But we try every other means before that occurs. Excuse me. Let me conclude by saying the book actually usefully assesses the counter-terrorist financing measures of both the EU and the Council of Europe, paying particular attention, and which is, I think, very welcome for us in Europe, on the framework decisions of combating terrorism, the Council common positions on combating terrorism, and the EU anti-terrorism sanctions regime, which I've referred to in passing. Whether sanctions are actually going to be the final way of dealing with it is another matter. But that really is a judgment for the politicians, not the lawyers. The book then goes on to review the measures which have been put into place since 9/11 in the United States. And we feel, therefore, that the work offers a much needed legal analysis of the measures enacted under this financial war of terrorism, and is a valuable resource for those researching in law, terrorism studies, defence, justice and finance, and of course defence studies generally itself. Obviously criminal justice is the main problem, because these people are criminals on an international scale, and what they do is horrendous. What Ryder says in his final thoughts are a passing comment for you all, and that is that what became clear after writing this monograph, he says, is that the international community was clearly unprepared to identify, recognise and tackle the threat posed by terrorist financing before the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Well, I have to say, why should they have been prepared? Because we weren't expecting it, and that's how they were so successful in their murderous endeavour. This work then is just a start, so thank you to Mr. Ryder, what's his name, Nicholas Ryder. I'm very grateful to him for actually starting the ball rolling in this area. But there's a lot to do yet, and I think it's only just started. Now let's have a quick look at the book again, just to remind you. It's only a short book. There we go. Paperback, back cover there. Just opening it in the middle. After the introduction, there's a lot of information. There are some personal opinions. I've certainly given you some of mine today. But what you have a very substantial statement on the US. For instance, paragraph 3.3, counter-terrorist financing after 2001. And I think that's an important point. It talks about the amount of money involved and goes into a lot of detail, which I'm not going to go into, obviously, in the review. And you can see what the Department of State says and so forth. Then we have a content on the United Kingdom, criminalisation of what is going on, and then other countries such as Australia. Then right at the end, which I do advise you to do, is to read his conclusions and recommendations, and the final thoughts which are in my concluding remarks are there. Thank you anyway to Nicholas Ryder for an excellent book. I'm sorry I have to review it in some ways, but that is the world we live in. It's a dangerous world, and we need to be prepared. Thank you to all concerned anyway for producing this work. Bye-bye.